Hello! Hello, my fellow conspirators. I'm gonna add some folks in here and get going. Hey, Clint, how you doing, buddy? We are doing the interview for Redacted Tales. I am trying to get everybody up here.
Hey, Kat, I need help with the. Oh, wait. Can you hear me?
David, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, they can't hear me. One second.
All right. All right, everybody here? Everybody good?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I had trouble earlier.
There he
I
is.
am here.
Awesome. Mike, Todd, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing, Todd? How you
Good.
doing, man?
Glad
got
you
it.
both could make it.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
All right,
Just
should
trying
we
to
get?
invite some people here.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, give
Anyway,
me one second. I'm just trying to. Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead and send out the invites if you want to. I was thinking I'm only going to hold you for like 45 minutes or so. Get down to the nitty gritty, talk about the project and both of your roles in it. And maybe answer some questions if anybody has any, stuff like that. Very normal, ordinary stuff. All right. All right, so I guess I'll start this thing off. So I opened up invitations to a handful of writer friends of mine. As you guys already know, Mike was on that list, as were Shay and Clint and some other people. Um, and I was immediately blown away with the story, of course. The Traveling Salesman is the story that we're talking about. And as I was reading it, there was only one voice inside my head, and that was Todd Waits. Todd is a fantastic narrator. We've known each other for a few years now, Todd.
Yeah, it's. I was thinking about that a little earlier. I was trying to figure out how many years it's been, but I'm not sure. But several years for sure.
Yeah, I think we met somewhere around 21, maybe 2021. We met through a mutual other narrator friend named Casey Johnston, and yeah, and I started following your work, and you started working with us at Eight Sparks. We did the writer's block together. We did
Yeah.
some Eight Sparks story stuff together. You did my the audio book for my book, Damn Ernie.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Awesome, awesome. So, also we got to meet in person once. We had lunch, even though you're from Texas and I'm from Maine.
Right. Yeah. We were vacation up in that area of the country, and that was one of the few things I told her that told my wife who plans all these things that's one of the things we got to do. I got to meet up with these guys.
Awesome, awesome. And we had a great time and we ate frog legs and hung out and shot the shit for maybe a couple hours.
Yeah, good food, good friends, and even caught a picture that looked like an album cover. Some people have said so.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. So, Mike, tell us about the traveling salesman and your experience listening to it for the first time.
Yeah, well, like when you reached out to me, I had, in my mind, I've taken quite a few blows to the head, so sometimes I'm not always there. And I was thinking this other idea, which you came because we just communicate back on TikTok. So I was thinking, oh, well, he had this tale, and I started thinking of like some of my childhood things, and I was like, okay, well, I got this tale of graveyard games, right? And I started writing it out, and it turned into like this full blown story. And then all of a sudden, I got back with you again, and you're like, well, let's keep it into like an actual short story. And I'm like, well, damn, now I got to come up with another idea. And then, I've traveled quite a bit. I did different, like when I was younger, I used to do different type of security jobs, and you find yourself in these very weird places. And I just remembered, there's been some small towns I went to that uh, really set an unease. You know what I mean? And it reminded me of a tale, or what I was thinking of when I went through this one town one time I was traveling, and that's how that came about. And I was like, let's whip this together and see if Clarence likes it. And then I whipped it, and I have two people that I bounce my ideas off now. One, like they were originally my original followers, Mary Ann, which is a very big favorite friend, and we've become very good friends. So, she go over there, she kind of critiqued it a little bit, which helped me out because now I think it flowed a lot better than the original version I had in mind. And whenever I heard Todd, there's a couple things came to mind. One, Todd, phenomenal, man. I don't know how you took a mediocre writer and turned it into like it sounded like a professional story.
It is a
Because
professional story. It's like I tell everybody, I can't do anything with it unless I've got a story to tell, right? So
I
you do
know,
all the
but
hard
like,
work.
so my writing style is different, right? One of the things I get, like even Clarence, I was talking to him, is one of the things I get when people read my books is that it doesn't read like a book. That's if you go look at reviews, it's always the exact same thing. It like reads like a movie that you're actually seeing it. And it was a little bit different. It was hard for me to write a short story because I usually write just full blown books. But I was like, okay, let me do this, and I got to make sure it's snazzy enough, but I don't want to give out the ending, even though it's a short story. And then when I listened to you talked about it, and I'm thinking, wow, I actually sound pretty talented. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, this came out. I don't know how, because that none of those sentence structures were correct. So
Yeah.
for you to turn it around, and then you hit some of the parts on it that I'm thinking, like, I'm glad I removed. I had a love scene in there that was a little bit more detailed. And I'm so glad after you read it that I removed that. So, like by far. And then one of the other thing that's been killing me since I've heard it, like I actually got chills, man. Like you did such a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
However, I'm a big fan of certain more of fantasy than horror. And there's one author that I've always favored so much that I named my daughter after his books and character. And whenever I started reading, we got it when voice narrating came out. I made it to where me and her could listen to it, and then we could actually just, instead of reading the books and going back, we could just sit at the park and listen together. I swear it's you, but I want to make sure. Because if it's you, that's going to be uncanny. That originally the one thing I loved the most was this guy's books, and because I had heard it from two different narrators. Like the one book was because Audible was acting up, and I heard it from a guy that sounded just like you, and then I heard it from a lady, and it was like vast difference. So, have you ever read any books for R.A. Salvatore, including like the Dritz du Erden series? I have to ask.
It wasn't me. I wish it was.
Okay.
No, it wasn't me.
I swear it sounded just like you, man. I was just gonna say that's
I
uncanny.
was I was really hoping that you're gonna throw out a name and he's gonna be, oh yeah, I did that one.
Yeah, that's all mine. Yeah, but it did. You
Yeah,
sounded just like him.
that would have been a great twist, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
The
really loved how
selling point.
you. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say the selling
No,
point
good.
was actually Damn Ernie. I sent Mike a promo code for Damn Ernie, and I was like, "This is the guy that I have in mind."
Yeah, and even that guy was really good. Like that when it came on there, I was like, "That's good." But then when Todd came on, when I conversed with you on there, you made it sound like because like my other books are a little bit more, they're way different. And then when you came up with the story, you were thinking like something more like X Files or a horror story or something that was kind of like in my head. I started thinking of like the old school like God, there was just I just talked about it. It's like back in the with the Gremlins on the plane, like the short stories on that, the old Hitchhiker series. So what was that thing? Twilight Zone. So I
Yeah,
was
the
thinking of the
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone, and then
Rod Serling.
and then when Todd started reading, he made it sound like it was actually a case file. Like this could have actually been a case file instead of just a narration. It was actually like, hey man, okay, maybe this did happen. That was really good.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I started reading through it, and once you get the character, and his attitude with, this stupid little hick town that I'm stuck in, and I don't like these people. I want to get the hell out of here. And after
Yeah,
that, it was there. I mean, I had him right then.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Did
fantastic character, by the way. He's not very likable, but at the end you kind of feel bad for him.
Right.
just a little bit, almost like I had to. So when you make a bad guy, you got to make him so despicable that
Hmm.
you're going to want that ending, right? But then when you see that I don't want no spoilers, but when you see that very ending, you're almost got a little bit of a twinge for him. But like the very first scene when he meets the kids is like, oh man, you want this guy to get it, and then at the
Yeah.
end you're like, wow, I don't know if I really want it that bad.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah,
It was a lot
definitely.
of fun to read, and it was a lot of fun. I actually want to go back and listen to it again right now. Uh, oh man, I've actually had the great honor of playing with that same idea. So I wrote a short story. Oh, awesome!
Whoa, got it.
Uh, I wrote a short story
I
a
didn't do
while
I
that.
look
back,
better.
and it might end up on the podcast at some point. But where I had a minor character, and he went down into the mines and found out that there was a bunch of like spiderling babies and stuff in there, and they're like half human, half spiders. It's pretty wild. So I had a great time with that. So to see a similar story, I was like, oh, that's fun.
Well, what one thing that got me was I was in so you see stuff like in old school books like Children of the Corn, right? And that's like one of these things that does it. And then I go from my father's story. So when my father used to work for McDonnell Douglas, he used to build fighter jets. However, this was back in the 60s and the 70s, and I was born in 73. As I growing up, I realized that my father he took whatever secrets with him to the grave, but he was part of a lot of classified stuff, and he
Hmm.
never shared them. But there was always hints at like certain things, and I was trained at a certain age. Like at 5 years old, I'm being taken out and I'm reading a room, reading people, reading your environment, what's the accents and stuff. So I was in this town one time, and I forgot what the job was, but I just went in there, and it reminded me of the diner. Like you got the old kind of like 1950s diners, the typical jukebox.
Hmm.
And I stopped in there, and it was a real small town. You could get through it in like 5 minutes. But everybody had the exact same mannerisms. Like from everybody was in there, everybody was quiet. I was an outsider. I go in there and I sit down. And usually you sit to where, like when you come in, you look at how many accents there are. And then you pick a seat far enough where that you can escape, but yet you keep your opponents in front of you, right? And then in an instant, you're trained to access that situation. And then all of a sudden, I swear, man, like everybody, like when they're eating, the forks had to be put down in the exact same spot. At the diner, like all the guys in the diner up there, the coffee is almost like they drank at the exact same time. It freaked me out. I was there for about maybe an hour. This was back in God, I think it was like 2000, maybe 2003, 2004 or something like that. And everybody had the same apparel, same dress. And I'm thinking, man, what time travel did I hit to get through here? And that's when it clicked on me. I was just remembering like my experiences, and that's how that story came about. And but who's to say that these things ain't real, man? I'm sure you guys have traveled enough that you're like, wow, that could actually be real. You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
you walk
I've
into one of
also
those diners and you say, okay, I can see why they filmed such and such in this setting because this could be that place.
yeah, I've also been into
Exactly.
town. I've been into towns actually recently. I went across the country in 22, and I went through this town where I was like, I don't think anybody is here. Like it looks like there were people here at one point, but everything is boarded up, and you're like, I think I might be alone in this entire town.
Oh, that reminds me. I want to. This would be a good story for actually Todd to actually narrate. If me and you should get together on it. So, as people know, I did a review on your book of with Without Saying Goodbye, which was an amazing story. Like, that I'm not saying this lightly, and I said this in the video. Your style of writing is phenomenal, man. Like, you should easily be because you have different levels. One thing is I don't usually take too well to like first person stories, right? Because then if it's not done right, you get someone that looks like it's being read. And I mean, I'm sure Todd might agree when you narrate, it almost like you're reading or voice acting someone's just their diary or a very badly written one. To bring a character alive in a first person story is something that's a talent, okay, that you're mesmerized as you go through. And like I ain't gonna go too deep in it, but I almost hit that situation, right? And then there was, I don't know if you guys know it, but in like Florida, there was the Dozer School of Boys, right? When that was like very similar to that thing. And me and my wife, we had just come back from my father's funeral, and I didn't even know about that place. And we were driving through Marion County, and I made a wrong turn. First, you're seeing birds, and it's like Disney picture, you know what I mean? We came around a turn, and then we come in there, and it's all, like you said, it's all boarded up. The buildings are just scary as hell. Like you get that eerie feeling. And everything's just disappeared. Like there's no sound. I'm like, where the hell am I? And I'm like, well, get the thing. And Sandra's like, well, pull over. And I'm not pulling the fuck over. I'm not pulling over here, man. We're going straight through. Well, we need to figure out where the hell we're at. And then we looked it back up in the Dozer School of Boys, right? And it's a very, really bad story behind it, which I won't go into. But Clarence's story was very, very close to that, really. And that hit me as well. How well you wrote that book fit that story of close to that where these are real things that really happen even though it's a story that you created. It still happens, and that goes to it. And then that's a question I actually wanted to ask Todd because after hearing you, I definitely would like, I already have Dory Roars that's on there, and then another one, Matt Magum, are two of my favorites that I would like to hire at some point to do a story. But on you, whenever you do narrations, how is it for you versus first person versus third person?
Um, Sometimes first person is easier because the narrator is going to be basically the same character as the main character, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you get to carry that throughout the entire story, and you can really play with it good because in like third person, you get to see all the action, but the main character doesn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the main character can be surprised. But if you're doing it first person, you can play that, you know?
Yeah.
You can say, man, I walked into this room and hey, what's everybody's problem? I'm just trying to be here, trying to do a good job and everybody's pissed at me. So he's got no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you do it like the third person, the narrator's telling everybody, he walked into the room and everybody hated him for what he said earlier to this little girl, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, first person can be a lot more fun. It's like with your story, the traveling salesman. You know, he he's scummy at times. You know, like you said, with the little girls that he meets at the very beginning. So you get to have fun with that. You can take that and carry that through. Like later on in the story, oh geez, there's those kids again. oh fuck, they're her kids, you know. So
The
That was
verbiage,
that was a
like when
great.
when he said the lines in there, like when he says the guy's lines, even his thoughts, that was brilliant. It came across so well.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a with the third person. Um, third person, it's easier when there's a lot of characters,
Mhm.
you know. But if first person, if there's just a few characters, oh man, you get to run with it and have fun.
Yeah. You know
Absolutely.
what's a great example of that? I don't know if you guys are familiar with You from like the Netflix TV show. Well, it's based off of a series of books anyway, and the internal monologue is done so well, like it's incredible. And I think Todd does a great job of that too.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
like I said,
man.
I got to have good writing to be able to, you know.
Have you, as a narrator, have you ever come across like to say a script or something that comes apart that's been given to you, and you're just like, man, this is kind of hard, just because maybe it wasn't up to like maybe a certain standard?
Yes, um, there have been some where you try really hard. I mean, you know, you got to give it your best, but you can only do so much with it. So,
What?
Anything that I've ever sent them,
no, no. There's
it's
this one
kind of
comes
like
to
kiss
mind.
egg.
This one book I did comes to mind where it's like every paragraph was one sentence, you know, and it's like, dude, punctuation. You know, these are thoughts. It's not a dissertation where you're trying to impress your professors. Let's get through this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was and that was a novel. It wasn't nonfiction, and that was like, okay, I had to go through the script and say, okay, I can breathe here. Let's break this up a little bit. You know, we got to breathe here. Let's make these two things one. You know, it was a struggle. Yeah, there's definitely that.
Well, what would you recommend? Let's say if like someone that was an author like me, that was Clarence went out and did the and got you to narrate it, and some indie authors always struggling to take and like get a proper narrator or whatever. But I would think what would be, instead of asking like, hey, what would be a good narrator for this, as coming from a narrator's point of view, what would you recommend the indie author actually have prepared before they bring it to you? You know what I mean? Like make sure that this is done or well edited, or, do whatever steps to take before they even give it to you, you know?
Yeah. Typically, we like to have a fully edited manuscript, um, especially if there's small typos and things like that. We can fix it on the fly. But if it's something that just doesn't make sense, like I'm working on one right now, and in the forward, I'm reading the forward, and it says, "And in our next story," I'm like, "Wait a minute, there hasn't been a story yet. How can this be the next story?"
Already jumping ahead, man.
Yeah, exactly. So trying to make things like that work, but this is nonfiction. But if you're doing fiction, the thing that I ask a lot of authors to do is when they're giving me their character list and with the character traits, try to put an actor or an actress that you think you could
Oh, that's
hire
good.
to do this role.
Yeah. That's
And
actually good because like I actually see that like in my books, like the twins, you probably haven't read it, but like in the twins, I actually saw the actors in my head first that I would use to them in case of like if there was some chance, like if there's anybody that's a film editor watching this, hey, you want to turn the book into a movie? Here's a good opportunity. I got the actors already picked out, but yeah, that's a good point that you made.
yeah, because I mean, we're not going to do an impression of that actor or something, but it'll give us the traits that you're thinking of, and something as simple as like their pattern of speech. You know, they might
Yeah.
not, they might talk in real staccato bursts or something. You know, or they just might have that type of talk where it's just rhythm and smooth and lyrical, and you just keep going on, and things like that help us tremendously, so
Mhm.
we
I
can.
want one. I want one book all in Christopher Walken. Could you could you imagine like just the like a horror story? well, I was going to kill, but
Where
that
are
was
you
horrible,
going?
man. Don't,
Come here.
yeah, thank
I
you.
told you, don't be around. It's just
Yeah, I
That's
screwed
great.
that up bad. I'm not a voice actor.
but
Everybody
no,
just quit. Like everybody left.
I was watching the oh gosh, this show with Jim Meskimen. He's a he's a great impressionist, and he had a little TV show, about 6 or 7 episodes, and he and his all of his I like sorry, my monitors keep shutting off and it gets dark in here. Anyway, they're doing like a walkathon to support something, right? But it's a walkin-a-thon. So all the people walking are talking and impersonating Christopher Walken the whole way they're doing this walk. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
That's
I love
great.
that guy.
Yeah.
He does the Continental on like SNL, and I would just die on that as a young kid, man. So, have you ever had a narration? I'm sure you have, like in let's say like the horror kind of like genre, where even you got creeped out by reading it, because that always makes me wonder. Like the narrators, I'm sure it's your job, but there's got to be some stories that you're all like, "What the hell?"
Yeah. I've done a couple of splatterpunks,
Oh, okay.
and the the one that I just finished, it wasn't really bad. The first one I did, yeah, it's like, you finish a scene and you got to wash your mouth out because it just leaves a bad taste or something like that. It's like, how
Yeah.
would somebody think of this and put this down on paper? But,
Yeah. That's the
that's
reason why I try
awesome.
to keep mine more. I like because I grew up like watching the old '80s films. Like I mean, that's where almost all my books are come from. Like is like that type of genre where it's in that setting, right? I try to keep it to where instead of even with like the movies, you just you can write any gore scene, but you want the creep factor there, and then I want it to break to where you're maybe like if there's two different scenes happening at the same time that one of the things that with my books is I get credited for is that they don't want to put it down. Like they can't put it down because they want to see what, because the way I rig it is that, you might be getting right to that point and then it switches scenes and then you're like, shit, and you gotta go back or you gotta go forward. But I try to add more of the suspense than just, the horror scene, because anybody can write a killing scene. So I always try to add like some kind of comedy, some kind of romance, something that hits all genres, but keep it more like towards like the goosebump realms than to an extreme. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because if you think about it, what's one of the scariest movies ever made? The Exorcist, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
most of the scariest things you don't see,
yeah,
or like in Jaws, you don't see the shark until towards the very end.
Yep.
But every
yeah.
time you hear that tuba playing, and it's all in your head, and it's making, as
Yep.
opposed to some of the others where the guy walks in and he hits you in the head with a sledgehammer. Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's all you've got. What he put on screen, you don't have any imagination to tell you what that scene is going on in you. So, but yeah, I
Exactly.
totally understand it. Or early '80s movies. Oh gosh, Poltergeist.
Yeah.
You know,
That's that's like I've seen. So I'm walk a line here, but like I've in my lifetime I've seen really horrific things, but so usually you get numb after a while whenever you see so many things. But Poltergeist from back in that day was such a strong hitter because you didn't see anything really, not really. Like through the thing you saw chairs moving and stuff, but like as that progressed, your own imagination had you freaking out inside your own home. To this day, that's the one movie I won't let my kid watch, and she watches like everything else. But that's I'm like, no, don't put that crap on the TV, man. The whole house is going to start shaking. You don't know what the hell's portal to hell's going to throw out there. That's
yeah.
how intense that movie was, well written it was, right? And then acted.
And that one scene where the guy starts picking at his face, just because that was just so intense and so different from the rest of the movie. That's why that one scene stuck out so much.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
just don't.
So go
They
ahead.
just don't make them like that anymore. They just.
It is a shame too, because like whenever you're I think that's like one thing, and another line I got to walk. So when you're a writer, so you look at how many books there are out there, right? So like there's in the world, you look at from the time of writing came about, libraries and libraries. You look at, if you ever stepped in like Library of Congress, you're just like, holy crap. So you got all these stories. One of the challenges, especially as an indie author, you got some legendaries out there, and I'm sure you've narrated these legendaries books versus like an indie author who's trying to come up. The struggle is that how do you get past, rewriting the same story someone else already written, right? Like a retelling. And it's not a knock against that. I'm just saying is that you really need at this point in stage in 2025, you need to step up the game to come up with a story that is so mind blowing and that has not been seen before. So now you need to make that spin because it becomes when you just like when you watch the same. Let's say I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. Like Jason's my favorite guy, right? That's my boy. However, after you've seen like 10 of them, it's the exact same thing. So it's like, hey, how do I make it more original? And that's what I think that's the challenge now for most indie authors. The next book I got to make has to be so good that it's got to be different, and then it's going to make an impression that they don't want to go to bed. And I inadvertently did that with one book, The Twins, which Clarence has got. He's probably got it underneath his table as a like Clint did to get that wobbly leg. There was a scene in there that I wrote, and this is a spoiler alert, so if anybody hasn't seen it, turn it off for about a few minutes here. So there's a scene where John, the main character's got a pig. And the pig has to meet its end in this thing because that's links him to the rest of the book, right? That's got to be bring him into it. The one chapter I wrote was through the pig's eyes, right? The pig meets an end. So that entire scene is written through the pig's eyes. Oh, wow. And it was so powerful that to this day, I get people that come up to me. And the end of the book has a pretty powerful scene. I do some pretty bad things in the book, and I'm thinking, if someone's going to get upset, they should get upset at the other ones. But that one scene, the way I wrote it through the pig's eye was so everlasting that I still get the first thing out of people's mouth when they recognize me is, hey, why'd you kill off the pig? And I'm just like, really? Did you not see the ending of that? And that was your biggest concern? And I didn't even, and I left it to the imagination. I really didn't show exactly how the pig got killed. But that was so powerful. And to this day, that book is like the biggest cult. It's probably not even my best written book, but it's the cult one. But that's where you got to like step up your game and leave something so memorable. You know what I mean? That they did it. In fact, I've told this story before, but that book almost got me arrested. I was in a store, and a friend of mine, I was working at a retail store, and a police officer had come in. And a police officer had come in there, and the shelves were about maybe chest level. You can see over them a little bit. Well, he came in, and he asked me a question about a product, and we were talking about the product on the bottom shelf. So he's down, I come walking out, and one of my friends came in that I gave the Twins to when I first released it. As when you start releasing a book, you got to give out a couple just to get it out there. She comes running in there. She saw me from the window. She goes, "Oh my God, Mike, I just finished your book." I was like, "Oh, cool." She goes, "I can't," or she that's what she not at the bag. She came in. She goes, "I just finished reading it, but you know what? I can't believe you killed off a pig and got away with it." That cop popped up, and he's looking over at me, and I'm all like, "It's a book. I write horror books," and he's all like, "Really? Well, where's the book?" And luckily, she had it in the car, and we're going there. It took me like 10 minutes to explain that it was an actual real pig in a book, but his head popped up so fast when she thought that I murdered off a pig, and he was like, "What the hell?" So that's when you did something good in a book, when that leaves that impression that you walk away and still, like years later, you still remember that book. Like, you know what I mean? Like out of all the books maybe even you, let's say of all the books you narrated, how many do you know that still stick with you to this day after years that it was that compelling of a story, right?
Yeah, it's few. I mean, because it seems like today, I know especially with the big publisher books, they're so formulaic. I mean, they got to do this, they have to do this, you have to do this, and then you have your, the ending. But with indie publishing, they're getting away from that. They're able to explore different, different ways of structuring the book and things like that. And that's why I've been, I've been working with indie authors so much, because they are so different from each other. I mean, if you
Yeah.
read epic fantasy from a publisher, you know what's going to happen. You're going to
Yeah.
have this race of character meet up with this race of character. They're going to go here. They're going to meet this guy. There's going to be the big evil guy that's going to be over here trying to do stuff. And it's a formula, like I said. So it's very interesting when you get something, like you said, a book that's written like a movie, something
Yeah.
totally different. And like with Clarence's books, like Wendigo. You're never going to see that. That's, something like that, that's what's so fun about this job. You get to read so many different types of books. The only downside is I don't really have time to read for pleasure anymore, but
Yeah.
I get paid to read, so I'm not going to complain too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having
No,
that problem too.
yeah, that's just it. Like, that's another thing too. Like you write the books because it takes a while. Like, even if you get like 3 to 7 clean pages, that's like a whole day, right? And then I don't do book reviews. I read books, and then that ones that I really like, if I got time to sit out, I'll read a book. Especially like Clarence or someone that hits me. Like if it's something that I really want to read, I'll read it, and then I'll leave just a quick review. I don't go in depth on it. But I used to read all the time, like it was nonstop. That's how I'm a big avid reader. I got one of the hugest libraries. But then when you become an indie author, you start writing your own books. It's like you almost got no time to do anything anymore. So it's kind of hard. You still love to do stuff. Like you said, as a narrator, you love to read, but now it's just work for you.
Yep.
I've come across that too. Now that I've opened up redacted tales, and I'm reading for business and pleasure, so it's allowing me to like do both, but at the same time, I kind of have to like look at it very objectively and think, well, maybe this wouldn't work or that wouldn't work, or maybe I'd have to cut this, and it's thus far I've been really lucky, and a lot of the submissions have been fantastic. And any of you guys that have subscribed to the YouTube channel, you got some fantastic stuff to look forward to. I'm really excited. Yeah.
That's cool. Now, for Todd, real quick. So, this is one question I asked Dory, and I love Dory. She's awesome. But I like to ask it at narrators. You guys are so good with doing different voices. 2 questions I always like to ask of narrators. One, have you ever got, because I've used to like mimic characters, back in the day, when you're driving, you might mimic it. And then, or you might mimic a friend or something. Have you ever been stuck in your head and you're just driving down the road and you start just saying that character like all the time, and then you can't get it out of your head like a movie thing or like a radio song? Have you ever had that one? That's the first question.
Yeah, there was trying to remember who it was, but there was one character. I drove my wife crazy because I can't remember, but it was one of those unique guys. He's an older guy, so he kind of had the rasp in the voice, and he was from Jersey, but he was a non-practicing Jew, so he still had a little bit of the Yiddish on him and everything like that, and be like, hey, what do you want for dinner? Yeah, I don't know. What are you thinking? What do you want? We can have this or we can do that. Oh man, it drove her crazy. But yeah, that guy stuck with me for a while.
That's awesome. And then the second question, how like you get telemarketers on the call. Do you ever mess with them back?
Oh, yeah. If I've got time and nothing going on, yeah, I'll mess with them, and I figure I'm having fun with it. Keep them on the phone for a little while so they can't mess with somebody else. You
Because
know,
me and my daughter, we were in there and we were watching. I used to do it. I can't do it anymore. But I would have like an Irish accent, right? I'm not Irish, but we would watch a lot of shows. We're big fans of like Boondock Saints and stuff like that. That's like our classic go to. So I had mimicked. We go to a lot of Irish bars where they would sing the songs, and I can't do it now. I'll just embarrass myself. And I got a lot of my viewers on here, and I don't want to lose them, but. I'm surprised they're still with me now. But we would get in the accent. So me and my wife and my daughter, we were inside of a grocery store, and it was late at night, and I started speaking in more of like the Belfast accent. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna try to do it, but it's not gonna work. I can't do it. I'm on the spot. Like you can do it on the spot, but I'd be like, I was just out there and I was like, oh yeah, it was like, yeah, little leprechaun. Yeah, gonna beat your bloody. No, I can't do it, man. I'm gonna screw it up. Anyways, it was spot on at the time. And this guy comes by and he's all like, "Oh, you're from Ireland, lad?" And I was like, "Yeah, from out of Belfast. I just had a visiting in the United States. Me and a couple of the others, we went down to the pub the other day, don't you know? And yeah, dude, you had a kind of pint of ale, a little, black and tan." And he's like, "Oh yeah, well, how long have you been in here?" And I said, "Oh, we just got here to my little door." And my wife is Filipino, right? So she's like 4 foot Filipino. And I was like, he's like, "Oh, is this your lovely wife?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, do you speak the language?" Well, yeah, I speak the Magandang hapon sa inyo. And he's all like, "Okay, well, I'll be letting you go, lad. I got to get back to my wife." I was like, and I switched, and I just totally blanked out, and I was like, "Hey, no problem, man. Hey, it was a really pleasure meeting you." And he just like this look on his face. And I broke character, but because I black out, you know what I mean? And then he was like, "Okay," and then after that, he was pissed, man. I was like, "Oh, I felt bad," but it was, he did technically eavesdrop on the conversation,
Right.
but I felt bad, but I had it going good until that point, and then I was like, "Oh, well, let's not do that in public again." But we had it down. It was good.
Yeah, it's you could do all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's so fun. You know, it's if you want to go and talk into the Irish, you can be sitting there and you'll be going on and on about it. Or
It's
if
awesome.
you put a little bit more into it and then you almost got it. So it's like, what are you doing here? And nobody wants you
That's
here now.
good.
Get the fuck out of here. Stuff like that. And I mean, it's like my wife now. It's just like the rolling of the eyes. Don't start that now. So
So,
No
it's like,
chance.
but
Clarence, you're.
I tell her, hey, this is research for work. I gotta get this character down. She doesn't believe me, but
That's awesome. Clarence, Marion's in the comments. She says your turn.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that. Can't embarrass myself too much.
So Todd, as an narrator, you got to be pretty busy all the time. So if like people like me want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do it? I know Clarence is probably going to do that at the end of it, but like I'm really enamored after hearing you, man. I had chills. I'm glad that Clarence went with you, especially just even when you listen to the prologue, it really hit hard. And you did bring the character to life. Like you, even the emotion. It is third party. And one of the things I had a bad habit of doing in the past, like with one of my second books, I was still kind of like learning how to get things down. One of the bad things with third parties, you head hop, and you're really not supposed to, right? So trying to keep it to where you're seeing it through his kind of point of view, you nailed it all the way through to the end. But you also had Latricia really down pat too. You know what I mean? So how would they reach out to you? Because I think that you would be spot on for a lot of the people, like other indie authors I know, you would do very well with them.
um, let's see. There's Facebook. Todd Waits Narrator. Here on TikTok. Just under Todd Waits. All my emails. I've got a audiobook production company, Twin Tails Publishing, that they can get through. We've got a bunch of narrators that we can put up for auditions for their books as well. And like I said before, we're primarily geared towards indie authors,
Nice.
because you know producing an audiobook can be really expensive, and especially with indie authors, they don't have 5 to 6 grand laying around to
Yeah.
put down for it. So we do a lot of royalty share work, which a lot of narrators, they say don't do it. Royalty share, you'll never get paid. I get paid quite well doing royalty share projects. I mean, I've had a royalty share project once that's paid my mortgage, a few months.
Wow.
Um,
Really? So that's cool, man.
I make more money on some of these books from royalty share than I would have made if they had paid me outright. So, um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I enjoy do that. Working with indie authors, getting them exposure out there, helping them out. So that's primarily what our Twin Tails Publishing does. It was founded by an indie author, a traditional published author and myself, we all got together and, put together so how we can help indie authors out there.
I think
So,
that's a good
I
thing
mean,
because yeah,
I'm
because
not
you look
trying,
at right
don't
now.
want to, yeah, I mean, I don't want to be plugging my business or anything, but
Well,
it
that's
really does help indie authors because we got cover artists, we've got editors, we've got all these things, to help indie authors out there.
well, plug it, man, because there's people like I mean, honestly, like whenever if you look around, I mean, that's one of the reason why I'm asking is because um, there's indie authors that reach out to me every once in a while, and they're like, well. How do you do this and that? And I don't like to give out advice because I'm not someone that gives out good advice on it. Well, I've seen some of them say, well, you do really well and this and that. It's just me being me though. Like I'm not, they're like, well, what, like when me and my daughter have our own show and stuff like that. And everybody's like, well, they love you. Is it scripted? No, it's not scripted. It's just us being us. I mean, one, neither me and my daughter can hold a thought for more than 2 minutes. So there's no way we would, have a script. But there's so many indie authors that don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And then sometimes they need that extra help. And then you got some people that do kind of like, jump on, you'll see them, hey, DM me for this. And that's a whole different thing. But we want that advice. We want that. How do we get to the narrators? How do we get to the exposure? And there's so many people out there that I think this is really beneficial that even Clarence is doing this because there's so many authors in the comments down below that you're now giving that advice to. So I like that.
Yeah, I've been doing this well over a decade now. So if anybody has any questions, hit me up. I'm more than welcome to answer any questions you have, to offer advice, how to get started in audio and things like that. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of times I tell the people, you can do this yourself. You don't need to pay me to do it. I can help guide you through the process. It's not that difficult to go on to ACX and find a narrator. So
Mhm. I've also been in this business for a long time, over a decade, and if anybody has any questions that they don't know how to get a hold of Todd or can't get a hold of him, I can figure it out. Even some of the narration stuff, I know a lot of people. Like I said, I've been in the business forever. But at this point in the show, I was going to open the comments section if you have any questions for Mike, Todd, myself. And as we're doing that, Mike, why don't you tell everybody where you can be found?
I'm on mostly just two platforms. I'm not very tech savvy. Most of my viewers know. So I'm just on TikTok and then Instagram. I do Facebook rarely. It's too much to keep track of, and then it's a little bit harder that way. And then I'm on Patreon. The Patreon's free for everybody. I don't feel like charging it. I'd rather have them buy books and maybe support me and other indie authors by doing it that way instead of paying another subscription that's out there on it, for at least for me anyways. And then they can find me in those three areas. My books are only on Amazon, so if you want to, you can collect all of them. I have several out now, and then I got a couple more releases coming.
Rain says, tell us about the spider.
So spiders in general, like the reason why that's about is because I can't give out too much because it's a short story. So the spiders play a part in it. Black widows. I always thought black widows were unique. The main character in it is kind of takes place in 1969. The guy's kind of chauvinistic, and black widows. They mate and then kill, and then I've been around a lot of things. Spiders are one of the things that freaks me out with like the legs and everything like that. It's the exoskeleton. I even put that in the character's verbiage in there. So the spiders play a big part in the book. I can't give out too much on it, but they do play a big part, mostly the Black Widow. And then I can tell you one scene that there is a car incident that involves a spider. So that's where that comes into play.
Awesome. Awesome. Todd, tell everybody where you can be found.
I'm just about everywhere, really trying to get out there as much as I can. Facebook, Todd Waits Narrator. Um, let's see, I'm on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it now. There, Instagram as well, TikTok, uh, Blue Sky. I think I'm on there as well. Geez, just look for this ugly mug. You'll find me somewhere.
Oh, come on now.
And my website is Todd Waits Voice. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. You can get me there. Again, the company is Twin Tails Publishing. Look us up there. I can't believe this has gone by this quickly, though. Jeez.
Yeah. I had a good feeling that this meeting was going to go over pretty well. Oh, what inspired me to start writing? Oh boy, do we have all day? So I've always had what I call a runaway imagination, right? And it got me in a lot of trouble when I was in school. I couldn't pay attention to save my life. I was constantly daydreaming and writing and goofing off. And I had this one English teacher, and she convinced me, and by convinced me, I practically mean bribed me, to read this book called Homecoming by Cynthia Voigt. And I was like halfway through this book, and I went to her and I said, I think I can do this. And she's like, I know. And that was, 20 years ago. And
That's
here
cool.
we are, 10 books later, and I'm still going at it. That's really the whole story. I mean,
It's amazing how one teacher can have so much effect on your life. Positive
Absolutely.
and negative. I mean, there are some that can have a
Oh,
real
yeah.
negative effect on your life as well, but positive influences like that's priceless.
yeah. And she's fantastic. And I haven't been in touch with her in many, many years. I probably should reach out and, get a hold of her and thank her for everything that she did for me. And probably apologize for being such a nuisance. All right, everybody. We're going to wrap this up here very, very shortly. I wanted to say thank you for tuning in, everybody. The episode, The Traveling Salesman, will be available on April 13th. So stay tuned. It is The Traveling Salesman, written by Mike Minicky, and then narrated by Todd. I'm sorry that my ugly mug has to be the face of this thing, but it's called Redacted Tales on YouTube. And eventually I do plan on going on to Spotify and other places too. But for now, we're just going to do YouTube exclusive. But stay tuned, because the first episode, which I've already recorded the interview part for, is Danielle Muthing and I. It comes out on Tuesday. It'll come out on Tuesday at 5:30. So how I plan on doing that is the story itself will launch at 5:30, and then by the time you get to the end of the story, the interview will launch. So you can watch them both very close together. So
Cool.
they're like half an hour apart. And I will take this interview here and I will put it on YouTube and I will launch it, right after the story. So yeah, stay tuned, everybody. Any last comments, anythings, hit the comment section before we wrap up. But my name is Clarence Carter. You can find me at clarencecarterauthor.com or TikTok, Facebook, whatever, any of those. One last shout out. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Todd. You guys are amazing. The story was fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
Thank
And
you.
I hope to have both of you back on at some point, maybe even together. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Always welcome to come on your show, man. Anytime you need.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody, for showing up for the live.
Had a blast.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.